Alright, hi. So we should be live now. So let's just check that that is the case. And I think we've had some semi-newish news, or at least some news in the past week with what Blizzard have been saying. I've just seen on MMO Champion, or saw a bit ago. Hi, Ogie. The part 2 with the Forbes interview. Most of it is just fairly straightforward, nothing really spectacular there. But there were a couple of things. So I'm just going to go down the list. Hi, Iron Templar. So what they've said is, so this was an interview with Ion Hazzikostas. Chromie scenario going to be unchanged, rewards as they were in Battle for Azeroth. So that's just not going anywhere. Class mounts still not going anywhere. Which actually I'm not sure about that, because I seem to remember, I don't know, I had in my head that that was one of the ones, hi Higpig, that was going to disappear when Battle for Azeroth came out. Because I seem to remember thinking to myself, I wasn't that bothered about the class mounts. I did it on the Paladin eventually just because, you know, why not? And then I remember thinking I should really do it on the Shaman, because actually the Shaman class mount looks really awesome. And then I haven't actually got around to it, and may not now, I don't know. But they're saying class mount's not going anywhere, so... Unless the reason I felt the need to do it during Battle for Azeroth was because it would be either more annoying or more difficult if the Broken Shore wasn't current anymore. I don't know. But anyway, class mounts are still going to be obtainable. It says there will be no change to mount and collectible drop rates from outdoor content in Broken Isles or Argus after Legion ends. So far, it's just the Mage Tower transmogs. It's not just the Mage Tower transmogs. There is another one that's not available as well. Shit, I can't remember which one it is. Is it Prestige? No. Something else isn't available. There is another. There's 2 artifact things. There's the Mage Tower. And there was the artifact appearance from another thing that was also going to be removed. But I can't remember what. Was it PvP related? No, I don't know. Oh, it was going to be the Mythic plus 15, but they reverted it. Okay. All right, well, there you go then. Okay, fine. Says the tower challenge was tuned around 905 item level and 50 artifact power levels. So the addition of max artifact weapons should help lower the stress of the challenge. Yes, I think it should. It says here, most of the challenges are about practicing mechanics more than gear and should be doable with outdoor Argus level gear. Well, the thing is, though, obviously I've not been able to do it on the Paladin one since, you know, the first time it went out. But there were mechanics in that would kill you if you got them wrong. And apparently they don't now kill you. So I would think it's fairly straightforward. How can any major game with many years behind it have such class imbalance in things like movement, self-defense, let alone damage, healing, and output? Well, like I was saying in my video, it's because they insist on redesigning classes every expansion. Some expansions, they do more of a redesign than in others, but there's a redesign nonetheless in every expansion, and it's expected. You know, people expect it. What was I going on? I was talking about something about the Tower Challenge. Oh yeah, that's right. There was some cheekiness on Twitter from Asmongold. Because Peculiar was linking something from Wowhead, saying that the Ret Paladin one was the most popular. Now, of course, we all know the Ret Paladin guide would be the most popular just because there are more people play Ret Paladins than anything else. You know, alts and mains combined. And Asmongold, being a bit cheeky, said something derogatory about Ret Paladins. So I had to pipe back by saying, oh, well, no, all the Paladins have actually got it. What you've got here are warriors on their Ret Paladin alts not being able to do it. To which some cheeky warrior then tried saying, oh, well, I've only played a total of 3 hours on my Ret Paladin and I did it first time. And he said he just did it yesterday as well. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, this is after your artifact traits boost your power ridiculously. He'll have, if he's not lying, obviously, you know, I mean, someone says something unverifiable on the internet, obviously must be true. But let's just say it is true. it'll be because he had walked into everything and failed to deal with any mechanics. Because obviously you don't need to anymore. But I mean, I don't know. Assassin Rogue is the same as Rep Powered for Mage Tower. Beat it without even trying. Failing a mechanic did 40 or 50% of your life. Well, there you go then. And for a Paladin, that'll be especially nonsensical because you can just stand there and heal it back up. They're just talking about not changing the classes. The best example of this is Diablo 3. They haven't really changed the class abilities since launch. I'm not sure. Yeah, I wouldn't compare Diablo 3 too much because it's not an MMO. And also, some people may suggest that Diablo 3 hasn't had an awful lot of development. Hi, everyone. But there are other MMOs where they don't really monkey about with it. MMOs that have been around for quite a while. But, you know, it's just a Blizzard thing, you know. But anyway, where was I? I was looking at other ones. So is that one? So that's Mythic Gul'dan and Argus mounts will become rare drops. Yeah, well, we knew that. And the Violet Spellwing mount will be unavailable when BFA launches. I don't even know what that one is. Never mind. I'm not into mounts. Legion's Brawlers Guild achievements will be replaced with Battle for Azeroth achievements. Diablo 3 requires way less tuning. They aren't dealing with 36 specs. Well, whose fault is it that they're dealing with 36 specs in World of Warcraft? But I don't think it's really comparable anyway. Different type of game. Be better. In fact, I think in Diablo 3, there's probably less. As long as you've got your balance in something like, there's probably less need to get it very, very close. Be better if Blizz kept Mage Tower difficult. A bit easier than the beginning, but still hard. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They could easily... The mechanics that one-shot you when it first came out, there's nothing to stop them still one-shotting you now. It could just do so much damage that even at the end of the expansion, it will still kill you. That would have been better. I agree with that. I don't know what. I suppose it's just because they're thinking to themselves at this point, let anyone who's basically paid their subscription, just let them have it as a memento of Legion. But yeah, I mean, if from a gameplay point of view, if you wanted to stick to that, because they initially said it will always remain challenging, and he said here it's about the mechanics. Well, if you can ignore the mechanics, it's not about the mechanics at all. I mean, gear always eases it anyway, because with more gear, you'll kill the things quicker, and so you'll have less of those mechanics to deal with. But you should still have to deal with the mechanics. It's a bit like Mythic Raiding. The difference sometimes with Mythic Raid and Heroic Raid, sometimes in Heroic Raids, you've got mechanics that will kill you. But once you've got some more gear, all of a sudden it won't kill you. Whereas in Mythic, it will always kill you. You do not outgear the mechanics that are designed to kill you if you get it wrong. So guilds that are coming through much later on and may not be dealing with those mechanics as well will still have a tough time of it. They will have to deal with those mechanics or fewer of those mechanics because they'll beat the fights more quickly, or most of the fights more quickly. But they still have to do the mechanics. If you haven't got the Mage Tower done by now, you obviously don't really want the transmog. Well, quite exactly. I mean, I've got the transmogs I wanted, which is exactly 2 of them. I'm not even bothered about the Holy One. I really couldn't give a shit. I've got the tank one purely because who doesn't want like a flail type thing? You know, that's awesome. I don't like the fact that when it's holstered, it drags along the ground. Well, actually, if it dragged along the ground, that wouldn't be too bad. But it's more correct to say that it sinks into the ground, of course, because, you know, clipping. But when you're wielding it, awesome. So I do like that. You don't like the bear and the cat transmogs, you don't get. Yeah, I never actually leveled my druid up to 110 in the end. It's still 101. I've got a legendary on it. It's still 101. The mechanics for Mage Tower, if you do it the proper way and not just burst your way, still will kill you. I don't know what is there that could still kill you. They still can't complete it at 960 plus. Ooh. Ooh. You're depressing me now. I mean, the flail is so easy to get now. The tanking challenge now. I mean, well, now it must be ridiculous. Even at the time, like, I was watching a guide, but I thought I'd have a go at it anyway. And I died a couple of times, you know, fair enough. But I'd stopped listening to the guide and I was just doing it and killed it. And I couldn't tell you what the mechanics were even after it. And this was a month or two ago. Couldn't tell you what the mechanics were. Even though in theory I dealt with them because I hadn't really had to deal with them. I just killed things that looked dangerous. Couple of times. And the only way to die, obviously you don't die, you get blown off the platform as a tank. That's the only thing to watch out for. Once you learn what's doing that to you, you just, you know, deal with it. Well, you don't even need Justicar's Vengeance. I think I use Word of Glory because the problem with Justicar's Vengeance, you have to be in melee range and build up, you know, which sometimes you're kiting something about. But in actual fact, Flash of Light, even at the time, I realised did the job for me. And of course, if you've got something like Pride As, all to the better. In fact, Pride As and Ceph is a Secret are probably, you know, really good ones to use on that. What else has he said? Professions, if you have an 800 skill level in Profession before the patch, you will have all previous expansions crafting maxed. If you have 650 skill level in Profession, you'll have 100 in earlier expansions. 50/100 for Wolves of Draenor and 0 out of 100 for Legion. Just as an example there. You just like a challenging game, that's why you play XCOM Longwood. Never heard of it. Where are we? All games are challenging. Snakes and Ladders is challenging. You know, if you want to put it down to that. You know, trying to cheat with dice is very challenging. Because that's the only way to, like, influence Snakes and Ladders. You can make any game challenging. But certainly any game of skill, like a sport, of course is challenging. The challenge lies in beating others. Whether directly or indirectly. Trinket proc and set bonuses will remain functional when the patch goes live. I don't like this. I don't mind the trinket procs. Set bonuses, I always think they should just disable, or at least once you've got a level or two, just disable the set bonuses. Really, you know, what? There are no plans to have events that boost leveling experience. Someone actually was saying this in the stream, weren't they? There are no plans to have events that boost leveling experience in the pre-expansion patch, such as the demon invasions, which is disappointing because that's not what they said. I mean, I know they didn't promise anything, but at the start of, you know, when they were doing this for Legion, they said, "Oh, we'd really love opportunities to use this," you know. And obviously, they used something similar with the actual demon invasions again on the Broken Isles. But they were really thinking in terms of what can we do for BFA with it. Obviously, the answer is sod all. That's a shame. That is a shame, I have to say. The team is happy with the overall pace of levelling as of 7.3.5. Bloody hell, I wouldn't be. Battle for Azeroth should be a little more out-friendly than Legion. Couldn't bloody well be worse. Despite what they said. Getting BIS legendaries for your spec and levelling each artifact weapon is no longer an issue. So it should be much easier to keep your other specs relevant. Yes, of course. That was ridiculous in Legion. Absolutely ridiculous. The loss of legendaries and the scaling is a brick wall from 160. You are certainly much weaker. Yeah, you notice it from, you know, as soon as that happens, you do notice it. At the same time, it's not that bad. But you do lose an awful lot of power. But it's only the equivalent of playing the pre-made characters that I've been doing in the beta anyway. And it's fine. More than fine, in fact. Blizzard feels... Now, this statement, I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'd be quite happy to agree with it. But I would think to myself, it's again, like I keep... Where did they get this? How do they know? I think they're just making it up. It says Blizzard feels that Legion was a truly successful expansion and players in general have been more positive about it than other recent expansions. Now, I'm quite prepared to believe that people are more positive about it than WoD. Even though for me it's reversed that, but I'm happy with that. I'm also prepared to believe that people are more positive about it than Mists of Pandaria, even though I would query that, because I'm not saying I automatically agree with that, but I'd be prepared to accept it. My question is, how do they know? Because I don't seem to have received a questionnaire asking me what I thought of Legion compared to Mists of Pandaria. Or even Legion in its own right. But, you know. Hang on a minute. I need to just do a thing. Hold on. There we go. Right. Where was I? Got so many windows I need to have open. Where was I up to? Yeah, Blizzard feels that it was... I mean, I certainly think they can be pleased with Legion. I'm not going to, like, you know, argue against that. But again, it's one of these things, you know, players in general don't offer feedback because they're not given an avenue to do so. So you've no idea what players in general think. Unless, of course, the sub count has been markedly up compared to Warlords of Draenor. Legion's success is partly only time played. Hi, Lamnacken. Hello, mate. Oh dear, rec questions. They are at the moment, yes. But choose what you want. There's not a huge difference in it. It's not massive. Not big enough to worry about. And it's an idea to practice both anyway, because you never know what happens when it's finished. When anything... The balancing has only just started. The tuning has only just started. Later than it was supposed to, but it is still only just started. The team is excited about the improvements to the gearing system, which gives more control to the player and lessen the impact of randomness. Oh, you want to lessen the impact of randomness? So why do we get between 1 and 3 pieces of gear from a Mythic Plus cache then? The highest item level pieces in the game that we can get on a weekly basis, and we get sometimes 1, sometimes 2, rarely 3. How is that lessening the impact of randomness? They're, of course, referring to the personal loot system, aren't they, here? That's what they're actually referring to. And which I've already said increases randomness. But anyway. The pre-expansion patch will have the story events and world quests leading up to the burning of Teldrassil. So we knew that. Catch-up gear will be included in the Darkshore world quest rewards for the pre-patch event. The plan is to have the battle for... I don't like the way they say the plan. Surely they must know at this point. The plan is to have the Battle for Lordaeron scenario available a week before the launch of the expansion for players that have purchased Battle for Azeroth. That comes as no surprise because the ending of that scenario did not feel at all like it joins directly with the start of expansion scenario. It feels like there's a time difference between them. You get to feel envious when you get 1 piece and your bud gets 3 pieces. And that. Well, that's exactly it. That's the problem with this potentially 3 pieces of gear from Mythic Plus Cache. It's a recipe. It's good. Someone who gets it will feel great. Everyone else will be disappointed. That same person who feels great because they got 3 will be disappointed every week after that when they don't get 3. It's like you will be disappointed if you don't get what you're not supposed to get very often. I give up with Blizzard. I seriously do. They're not grounded in reality. I don't understand. I give up. Oh dear. Anyway, so yeah, but with that statement, they are of course talking about the personal loot, which, you know, what we're saying. I think it was Mad Season's show who recently did a video on YouTube giving the WoW story. No, that was Blizzard. Blizzard did that. That's a weird thing as well. I don't understand this, right? So I was actually on YouTube when they brought it up as well, so I was straight onto it. I watched that video that Blizzard did. So Blizzard, when they went through the whole history of World of Warcraft, where Ion Hazzikostas would have been talking from a player's point of view to begin with. He did it before them, did he? Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, I'll come to a comment in a moment then. Sorry. So we released this thing, and then I saw, I think it was Wowhead link it later on, and it was like Wired, and I thought, what? And then I'm just seeing on MMO Champion, again it's saying Wired, and I'm thinking, I'm going to check something actually, because something's not quite right here. Because the where is it? World of Warcraft. Oh, okay. So it wasn't on their own chart. So that explains it. It's okay. It's me. I'm not going mad. It's fine. It's okay. All good. Okay, let's go back to your comment then. So you think the sub numbers said it all? No, the sub numbers don't say anything. People will, when the sub numbers obviously after a point inevitably went down. You can't say that is linked to, because people like to do that. They like to say, oh, here's this thing that I don't like. Okay. They find out a time when they can say it was in the game and then go, oh, look, the sub numbers went down after that. So everyone agrees with me that was a stupid thing to do. You read nothing into sub numbers. The game, the heights that World of Warcraft reached as it grew in popularity towards Wrath were freakish. Basically, they benefited from a perfect storm. So many things that contributed to it. Yes, it was a great game. It was well designed. It was very accessible. All right. But it also benefited from the fact that, and this is what, one of the reasons why I got into it and hadn't played any MMOs before it. It benefited from the fact that in developed countries at the time, broadband was being rolled out to, the peasantry. So us plebs got hold of broadband internet, which is fairly useful for being able to play an MMO. And it had its established play base. And once it got momentum, and, you had little things that got it into the public consciousness. The Leroy Jenkins things, don't understate just how much of a marketing boom that was. The South Park episode as well. So many things brought it into the public consciousness. And, and I think you also had a whole generation that were round about my age, maybe a bit younger as well, that were all of a sudden, on their own, could get decent computers as well as broadband and all the rest of it. But, the gaming generation. It's just so many things there. But I don't think it was sustainable at all. Because you can also map against the fall in subscriptions. You can also look at things like Google Trends. And you can see that searches for MMOs in general have gone down over that same period of time. So although it's lovely for me, for anyone to say, look, I don't like this thing and I don't think the rest of the player base do. Oh, and look, you lost subs at that time. Therefore, everyone agrees. I don't think you can say that, really. Correlation is not causality. First rule of science. Anyway, where am I? You're just relieved that the slot machine that was legendaries is not being carried over to BFA. So am I. Well, I still think with legendaries that Amanthal's vision was a test to see if that's the sort of thing they can get away with in the last tier of this expansion as well. Doing legendaries, like, what have you just said there? Sorry. Lich King and Kata, they'd be the worst sort of legendaries. You could never get away with those sort of legendaries now. Of all their legendary systems, that's the worst. because it was for specific classes. Unless, of course, what they mean by that is you gather things from doing raid bosses and you get your own. It's personal to you. In which case, that's really the model of warlords and mob. These legends are like the loot boxes in other games. You just pay a sub to gamble. I wouldn't put it as strongly as that. I wouldn't put it as strongly as that. Because unlike loot boxes, you're not paying for them. You're not necessarily even paying a sub. Some people remember, and I don't know how they do it, but they do. Some people are able to cover their sub with in-game gold. So it's not necessarily even that. But yeah. I think that's all they had to say on those subjects. Lost it again. Oh yeah, and there was one other thing, wasn't there? Where was it? You sure investors want loot boxes in WoW? I'm quite sure. Yes, I would be. There's so many things, and this is why I know some people like always jump down my neck when I say this. I want Blizzard to expand the online store with cosmetic stuff, and the reason I want them to do that is because I fear a time where the investors get, noisy enough. When it becomes more the norm, it becomes more the norm. Unless countries, and it needs governments to do this, unless they recognise it, as a couple of governments have sort of tried to do, but no one's really taken any firm action. Until they recognise it as a form of gambling and put laws in place to curtail it, or at least warn parents, and when it comes to it, the adults amongst us who buy these games, it will become more the norm. At a point at which it becomes the norm, I think Blizzard would be unable to resist the calls for it to be added in. However, if they were able to say, well, we're able to generate plenty of extra income from cosmetic stuff on the store, which is much more popular, then that could waylay those demands. So that's why I would want them to do that. I think it's a much better outcome for the players. I don't see anything negative about cosmetics. I know collectors will obviously not really like it, but it's not like there wouldn't be stuff to collect in game without buying it. It's just that there would be extra there, and it's far better than loot boxes, because it will happen. It's just that Blizzard is resistant at the moment. I think it is run by gamers. They have their scruples. But, eventually there would be calls, because it'll just become as soon as Blizzard are the odd one out, obviously they don't mind being the odd one out too much. They are, all right, someone said not unique, but they're virtually unique in being an MMO that has a purely subscription-based model. And even then, you could argue, is it really purely subscription-based? Because some people get it with in-game gold. But it's very, very... which makes them more money, actually. So win-win. Blizzard sure isn't resisting with Overwatch and loot boxes. Well, but isn't the... I don't play Overwatch, but I occasionally listen to other people talking about it. Aren't the loot boxes in Overwatch cosmetic? In which case... that's not as bad. I mean, I think that the whole loot box system is too akin to gambling and should be recognised as such. But if it's only cosmetic, yeah, that's a lot better than in other games. Where it's cosmetic, I have less of an issue with. I would still rather it wasn't in them at all, because it's too easy to spend too much money if you're not really keeping an eye on your bank balance. I was looking for something. I've completely forgotten what it was. Oh, I think I've remembered. There we go. I'm just gonna put that there for no apparent reason. Right. Do any of you think Blizz, and Ian in particular, are keeping any features hidden until close to release? Any aces up their sleeve? If so, what would you like to see? The big ace up their sleeve for Legion, you could argue, was Trial of Valor. We didn't find that out until after it launched, did we? Possibly the Karazhan dungeon as well. I can't remember when we found out about that. WoW tokens being pay to win. I can see people's argument with it. I'm not going to dismiss it, but I would argue no. So the pay to win element with WoW tokens is you can use real life money to buy in-game gold and buy BOEs off the auction house. And some of those BOEs could, in theory, be BIS in the game. Because they could be of a high enough item level that it is the best item you can get for that slot. For anyone, even a Mythic Raider. So I can see that argument. However, it's obtainable by anyone for gold. And gold can be acquired without having to do that content. They just have to spend more time at it. But it's still low-level stuff required to get the same amount of gold. Low challenge content. So from my point of view, what pay to win would be, it's, you know, mythic gear that can only be obtainable from mythic bosses. And let's say you could buy that for real money. That would be pay to win. Whereas I think the BOEs, because they're available to anyone who farms the gold, and farming gold, obviously people with a bit more skill can farm it more quickly, but it's low challenge content to do. So anyone could do it. It just might take you a lot longer than paying 17 quid. Or you might need more than one WoW token to pay for a BIS BOE. They said they had a few surprises, whatever that means. What it means is they want us to think there's even more coming. Whether that surprise is a good thing or just a damp squib, we'll have to wait and see. Sometimes it's really nice. Sometimes they actually do have nice surprises. Sometimes when, you know, they have a surprise and we find out what it is, it's like, oh, is that it? You need to play the auction on game a lot if you want to pay that way for subs. Yeah, but a lot of people do. Thank you, Thomas. Rift gives a daily, weekly patron login box as a reward. Flask, etc. Well, that's the sort of thing I would like to see more of. I would like to see more rewards that are not gear or strength related. You know, I've said this before. A lot of the content they want to encourage us to do, just have it drop. You know, stuff like that. Flasks, potions, consumables would be a good thing. Crafting materials. Because then what you can do, if they're useful to you, great. If they're not useful to you, you can put them on the auction house, bit of gold. So that's suitable for everyone. And it means that non-raid content, raiders don't feel they have to do it, or anyone else come to it, doesn't feel they have to do it. Yes, David. WoW token is over 300 gold on yours. It's not server related, remember, it's just region. So if it's 300k, over 300k on your server, I'm guessing your EU, that's what it is across the whole of the EU. North America has a different value, much less in North America, for whatever reason. Thought that the intent of WoW tokens was to destroy the gold and farm sellers. That was part of it, certainly. The other part of it is so that they could get an action in on the gold buying market. Because every WoW token, to the person who uses it, it's worth 1 month's sub. But it costs people like me who buy them for the real money, 2 months worth of sub. It's twice as much as a monthly sub to buy a WoW token. But it grants 1 month's sub. So Blizzard, for every person that gets it with in-game gold, Blizzard have made twice as much as they would have done if that person had to pay for a subscription. But it also has the effect, yes, of pulling the rug from under the feet of gold sellers, which is a good thing. Because I still see gold sellers in other MMOs, and it's bloody annoying. Your experience, it takes about 5 hours of crafting and playing the auction house to get enough gold for a monthly sub. Well, if you know what you're doing, well, there you go. That's quite interesting. I think most people would probably have to take... I would have to take longer because I wouldn't know what I'm doing. But there are obviously enough people that are able to do it, of course, because there's always demand. If there weren't the demand for WoW tokens that there are, the price wouldn't be as high as it is. The demand in the EU is therefore much higher than it is in North America because the price of it is not determined by Blizzard, it's determined by supply and demand. It's just smoothed out a little bit. Any thoughts on primary out for BFA? I don't know. I really don't know at the moment. I've got to be honest. I'm really not looking forward to BFA. I'm not excited about it at all. Apparently, they're not permitting ads for in-game services. Hang on. They're not. What? Via the group finder. Oh, I see. Oh, no, I didn't know that. Okay. If the store included buying transmogs like old raid tiers, you'd be in line. Well, but this is why I think they should just expand. I'm not sure they would ever do that because they'd want us to spend the time in game farming that. But if they had different cosmetic stuff. Yeah, it'll be the ones wanting to sell for gold, services for gold, as opposed to actually just forming groups. To be honest, though, I'll tell you what I'd like to see Blizzard do. Maybe, because they're already going to portion it out anyway. At the moment, if you look for, say, a Mythic Plus group, then you just got to scroll down and try and find the plus 15 or whatever it is you want. They're going to change it so you can search by level, keystone level, which is a great idea. Maybe what they could do, because, yeah, I get it, it's annoying. If you're just looking for a group and you don't want to have to filter through all the ones that are basically selling a boost. But maybe you could have a separate one, because maybe some people want to buy a boost. So maybe there's a separate section so you can filter out ones that are paid for boosts, obviously with in-game gold, not breaking the rules here, and other ones that are just pugs. That might have been better. Still remember when at the end of your TBC account, or your account was $500 on illegal selling account sites. It depends what you mean by a buyer, doesn't it? It goes up if the people wanting to buy it for gold go down. Because there's fewer... sorry, if people wanting to buy it for real money, sorry, behave yourself. But yeah, it's confusing when you talk about buyers with relation to the WoW token, because people at both ends of the thing buy it. Just one buys it for real money and one buys it for gold. But yeah, the price is always higher in Europe than it is in North America. Someone was saying, because someone was showing from that video the history of it, I noticed. It's on Discord or Twitter or something. And it had a thing from the WoW token when it was like something like 25k gold for a WoW token. Whereas now, last time I checked, it was about 350,000 gold. Maybe a bit less or a bit more now. I don't know. It may sneak up a little bit in a couple of weeks with the pre-patch. It means fewer people want to buy it for real money as compared to the people who want to buy it for in-game gold, yes. You know, the supply is less compared to the demand. It might be that there are more WoW tokens still being traded and bought in EU than North America, but the relative ratio, the quotient there of supply and demand is less. Or is it 15k even? Don't remember it ever being that low. I suppose it must have been at some point. I do remember it being about 25k though in WoD. North America 211,000. Yeah, that's way. That's about 2/3 of what it is on in EU. So yeah, a lot more gold mining, gold farming, whatever you want to call it, to be done in EU. They only smooth it out though. They don't manipulate the price. If they manipulated the price, then that, couple of months event where it crashed the game wouldn't have happened if Blizzard had any control over it at all. Or it's not that Blizzard buy the token, they just make up any difference. If the price goes low because all of a sudden people are satisfied that the supply is fine, then they'll make up the difference so that you're guaranteed your price. But then they also pocket the extra if when you've bought it, it's worth, say, 330,000. But when it sells, it's actually cost the person who bought it 340,000. It's Blizzard that pockets the 10k there. But then they'll also absorb it if it goes the other way. The addition of being able to convert it to Battle.net, yeah, that jacked up the price, of course. That was a good thing as well, of course. But inevitably, I mean, it's simple, isn't it? Making it more useful, allowing it to be used in more situations was, of course, going to increase the price. Start of Legion, buying WoW token with real money wasn't worth it. I can't... Mid-Mythic Nightheld progression tier, possibly. Affected by adding Destiny 2 and COD. Well, the COD is what broke it. It's the Call of Duty that broke it. Buying an X-Pack with Battle.net balance too, yeah. But anyway. I still think though that even being able to do things like this, it's some of the services should be made cheaper. I really don't think there's any justification. Like at the moment, I'm thinking to myself that because I haven't transferred any characters across yet, because I'm not only having to transfer realm, I'm having to transfer faction. So I'm going to leave it until I absolutely have to. And at the moment, I don't absolutely have to. So normally I would, even before I know whether I was going to be happy with the new guild or not, and everything was going to work out, I would generally transfer a couple because, what the hell. But this time it's been so expensive. And with me buying all the Warhammer stuff at the moment as well, I'm thinking, do you know what, I'm just going to leave it for now. Blizzard already sells power leveling and gold selling tokens, so what more can they add? Cosmetic stuff. Multiple years concurrent subs should give discount. Well, here's the thing, right? So, like with other MMOs, tends to be ones that have some sort of free-to-play model, but still, there's no reason why Blizzard couldn't have an online store. So with an online store, you have a currency. Obviously, the currency couldn't be WoW token. You'd have to have smaller subdivisions. So then what happens is, and then you've got your goods and services on it that you can get with that currency. Now, what you also have on those games is with your subscription comes a certain amount of that currency. And the same thing should apply here. Really, the same thing should apply. They should introduce a currency that is a fraction of a WoW token equivalent. And, have that as the currency on the Battle.net store and give you an amount with your monthly subscription. If they cut their service price in half, it would still be expensive. It would, yeah. Some of it would. Some of it I don't know is that expensive. I don't think the name changed. Or is it? Maybe it is. I seem to remember one of the things isn't that expensive. But changing faction is hideously expensive. And with no justification for it either. There's zero justification for it. They've already buggered factions. There is no pretense that they want to do it to put the brakes on imbalances in factions. That train's gone. Blizz needs to just get rid of servers. Yes, I would agree with that as well, but then that cuts away a load of their income. Mostly an arbitrary designation. Well, they were important at one time. These days, you could argue an MMO that has them is sort of arbitrary. Only Blizzard has monetized them. Blizzard has monetized their realms. ESO is a much better system, yes. Turbo points from Lotro, yeah. Lots of games have got the equivalent thing. Except they're not called turbo points in Lotro anymore now. They're just called Lotro points because it's not Turbine that do it. They passed on the game to its developers. Talking about boosts, there's an article on Wowhead saying that they are not allowing... Yeah, someone just said that. Not allowing advertising carries and boosts through the in-game group finder, even with gold. Yeah. I was saying that they should be allowed to filter. So people looking for boosts should be able to look those up. But people who just want a pug should also be able to filter them out. They price it high because we pay them. Yes. See, here's the thing, though. Do they really know that they're getting away with it? Because I know that there are people all the time that quit the game, which means they're not getting any money from them, because it's too expensive to transfer. Now, if they feel they're getting more money from the ones who will pay to transfer than the ones they're losing, then you could argue that economically they're doing right. But how do they know that is what I would be keen on to know. I said that the Mythic Plus gear lock is an issue of class design. That's fine for raiding. I wasn't talking about raiding, I was talking about Mythic Plus. Infinitely scale Mythic Plus system, surely there will always come a point of imbalance. I don't know what you mean. You'll have to explain, sorry. I'll come back to that comment in a minute if you explain it a bit more. Need to cut away that income. They need to stop seeing servers as income. Yeah, but they don't. Because we all know it's not the game's developers. I'm sure the game's developers do not like the idea of losing subscribers. It's not good. It's like me on YouTube. I hate to see, subscribers being lost. I'd rather not have gained them in the first place. I'd rather people considered more carefully who they want to sub to. But I do ask for it, technically. So the games designers, I'm quite sure, are just as downhearted because I'm sure they get to see the numbers, or at least the most senior ones do. I'm quite sure Ion Hazzikostas does, and I'm sure it's pretty downhearted. But this won't be a decision that they're making. This has got nothing to do with game design. This is entirely to do with monetizing the IP. Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Used to be able to stay on your old server. Now, if you want to raid with the guild, it's often not an option unless you can server transfer. Oh, is that what you meant by raiding? Is it? A new raiding guild these days, server transfer. Right, I see what you mean. Yes. Well, yes, obviously for raiding, it's a huge issue. But then there's the thing, because this is the thing. This is the thing that gets me. When sometimes you'll talk about something, I'm missing some comments. I will try and come back to them. You're talking about something, and I get so many comments all the time. It's like, oh yeah, but you're only talking about Mythic Raiders. You're talking about a small proportion of the player base. Blah blah blah, insignificant. But here's the thing: server transfers. Who's that for? Mythic Raiders. Who else is going to pay those server transfer fees? Not Heroic Raiders. You don't need to pay server transfers to Heroic Raid, right? First of all, you can find guilds even on low pop realms that will do Heroic Raids, and they're cross-realm anyway if you just want to find a group to do it with on a weekly basis. It's for Mythic Raiders. Obviously, they're adding an option to like cross-realm Mythic at some point, but it's not, you have to have the top 100 do it on both. So server transfers are entirely about getting money out of Mythic Raiders, or almost entirely. So it can't be that small a population as people would like to think, albeit a minority, of course. You quit the game because Alliance died out, and I didn't want to fork everyone to go Horde. Well, I have to be honest with you. I was doing a video for Patreon yesterday where I was talking about, because it's more coming to my mind that there's going to come a point when I stop playing World of Warcraft. Now, I'd always thought up to this point it would come when World of Warcraft ends. But will it? So I'm going to do another video on YouTube about it. A big old rambling video, by the way. I will forewarn you. And I'm intending for that to come out. I might record it tomorrow. But I'm intending for it to come out on Friday. But part of it is you've got the things that are pulling you into it that are going, you know, these are the reasons to play World of Warcraft. But then on the other side, you have someone nudging you going, yeah, but these are the reasons why maybe you shouldn't play World of Warcraft. And obviously at the moment, the pros outweigh the cons. But the fact that I've had to go Horde, there's no getting away from it, that's a con. You know, that tips the balance the other way slightly. Obviously, I've gone Horde, so I'm prepared to do it. You know, the balance is still in favour of pros. But I'm getting closer to the tipping point, I think. Not that I'm blaming Blizzard for that, even though for some of the things that are contributing to the cons are things they could do something about. But on balance, obviously, it's a personal thing whether you want to play a game or not. What do I think about Classic WoW? Will I play it? Will I care? I will play it, but not a lot. I'll play it purely for nostalgia. I'm not one of these people who thinks it was a better game then. I understand people who do, by the way. I'm not saying they're wrong. But I mean, I talked about that in the mailbox, actually, I think. But for me, I did it, and it was done. And I'm happy with what I did in it. So I would do it for nostalgia, but not play very often. I'll have a character and, you know, a paladin, and I'll do some stuff on it. Because I did like the old style of questing. I preferred it. I didn't necessarily prefer the fact that all I could do as a paladin was walk up to something and auto-attack it. But, you know, there you go. Blizzard has new policy changes to advertisements. Yeah, I know this keeps cropping up, Frozen. 2 people have already said this, yeah. I said all classes should have the tools they need to handle every fight, but since Mythics Plus scales infinitely, eventually some classes will outshine others no matter how good the balancing is. Not necessarily. That being said, when I say have the tools that are needed, I mean literally that. I don't mean everyone has the same even utility. I just mean the tools that are needed. Everyone, you know, tools that are needed are interrupts, so everyone should have an interrupt. It's possibly right that a ranged has an interrupt on a longer cooldown because they get to do it from further away. That's an advantage. So pay for it with a disadvantage. Defending yourselves against abilities that will otherwise one-shot you is a necessity. So everyone should have a defensive cooldown that will protect them from that on a cooldown that means they could use it every time that ability happens. And then it's up to the class designer. You know, if the class designers decide that that should be a 2-minute cooldown, maybe some people get it on a 1-minute cooldown, but maybe they say, but, you know, 2-minute cooldown is where we are, then that's down to the encounter designers to make sure that no one needs it more than every 2 minutes. And then maybe the people who have it on a 1-minute cooldown, maybe they get to use it for that eventuality, but then maybe they also get to use it for when they mess something up, you know, as well. So it's a bit better for them. So, you know, you can still have a bit of variation there. But when I say need, I mean need. No one should ever be told, we're not bringing you along to this thing because your class is no good. Now, if people are saying that and they're wrong about that because they just don't understand the game, Blizzard can't help that. There's nothing they can do about that. But when people who clearly do understand the game are saying it, then that's a failure. Sorry, I'm going all over the place with the comments. It was very quiet for a bit and then there's now loads. So that's that one. RIP Kazakh boost groups. I don't know anything about that. Even though I'm on Kazakh now. You don't mythic raid, you're heroic raider, you want to be in the guild you raid with. Of course. But bear in mind, the nature of guilds is changing in Battle for Azeroth as well. You know, in fact, it's dreadful. If you've seen the UI that we've got to put up with for guilds for BFA, I hope they change it because it's awful. And I'm not the first person to say it's awful as well. But it's changing. So although you'll still be in a guild, you can belong to other communities. And they're, to be honest with you, the way it seems to me, they're very similar to communities. So you could easily be in a cross-realm raiding guild for Heroic and still be in your own guild. It could well be that two guilds join together in a cross-realm Heroic raid, you know, and team up. Server transfers should be free if you're able to link ahead of the curve. Well, I do think you should get a free server transfer, faction included if necessary, for every, let's say, 6 months of subscription. And I think it should be less expensive for any extra ones you want to pay for as well. RIP token carries 2. Now trade chat will be filled with Twitch key carries. Oh, well, I don't pay much attention to trade anyway. You think they could bundle in the race change and appearance change into a single item? Yes, they could. They absolutely could, yes. Works similar to a Fantasia from... I don't know what that is, but yeah. But certainly they should lump a few things together, I agree. I don't see why faction change should cost extra. I think there should be transfer, which covers realm and or faction. And yes, there should be appearance change, which covers race, albeit not across faction, and or what name and whatever. Faction transfer is mostly a Mythic Raiding thing. Well, that's what I just said before, isn't it? It's mostly a Mythic Raider thing. And the fact that it's in there and the fact that it's so expensive means, and the fact that Blizzard won't revert to, what was I talking about? Yeah, mega servers. It must be because they're making enough money from it. So all these people, whenever you try and say something that relates more strongly to Mythic Raiders going, well, there's only like a few of you. It's like, no. There's clearly far more than that because we're paying enough money into a system that is preventing Blizzard doing away with realms. Because realms, as a couple of you already said, have no basis anymore. There's no relevance to them other than the fact that it's been monetized. How will Rep perform in 1v1 duels? I ain't got a clue. Don't know anything about PvP. No idea. Will guilds outside Mythic die out due to pugging with communities? I'll say. I don't understand how heroic guilds survive even now, but they do. You know, they do. So, I don't see... I don't see why they wouldn't carry on, because I don't see that it's going to put extra pressure on them than already exists. I think the problem already is... Let's say, for example, whether I do it is another matter. Let's say I decided to quit Mythic Raiding, or for whatever reason, I had to stop Mythic Raiding, because that almost happened. It's already almost happened. At the start of Antorus, just before Antorus came out, I was looking for a guild. I wasn't finding one. So... 24 hours before Antorus was due to go out, I didn't have a guild. That being the case, the strange thing is, I wasn't panicking. I was actually at peace with it. Now, at that point, I might have chosen, and if I had to stop Mythic Raiding again, I might choose to do Heroic Raiding. Will I join a Heroic guild to do it? No, I will not. I will... try and get into a pug. My Wednesday nights will be spent in looking for group or group finder, whatever you want to call it. It's group finder really, isn't it? Trying to find a group to get it done with. So I already don't understand how heroic guilds exist, but they do. Whether I understand it or not, they exist. They are a fact. So yeah, I really don't see that they will die out as a result of communities. Talking class buffs, not all classes have them in BFA. No, only 5 do. The buffs that are... no, they're not replaceable. No, 3 of them are replaceable. Because really, when we talk about class buffs, It's more strictly speaking true to say there are 3 class buffs and 2 class debuffs. The debuffs can't be replaced by inscription scrolls. And also, even the buffs can't be replaced by inscription scrolls. You get a lesser version on inscription scroll. Which is, I mean, I haven't, the class buffs video, by the way, I'd scripted it before the weekend, but I haven't done it. It's been too hot. It was going to come out today, but then I've shifted this today. Hopefully I'll do it for tomorrow. But yeah, the debuffs are the real ones because you've got no other way of getting them into your raid or dungeon. Blizzard are a company here to make money. Absolutely, yeah. I certainly wouldn't suggest they make any decision that lowers their income. I'm not one of these people who goes, they make enough money, they should give us this. But they can make the money more ethically, I think. I'm not saying they're unethical because they don't do the loot boxes, which is always a good thing. But they don't have to charge as much for server transfers. They could do more for they could expand their cosmetic stuff more. And they would make more money from that. Because then that would be targeting casual players as well. Heroic guilds won't die out. Heroic guilds don't want to pug anything either. A lot of heroic guilds still find it challenging and like clearing the raid with friends. There you go, exactly. The problem with heroic pugs is that they can really suck. Yes, they can. The number of non-full clear pugs I end up finding is pretty shit. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. When I say if I stop Mythic Raiding, I might do heroic pugs, I equally might not, because it might not be worth the hassle. But also, I wouldn't want to join a heroic guild either, because that would definitely... Like, for me, even like the last 2 mythic guilds I was in towards the end when they weren't really making good progress, that was too frustrating for me. So I can't even begin to imagine the frustration I would feel in a heroic progress guild. So it'd be a very unpleasant experience for everyone concerned. So I certainly wouldn't do that. Heroic guilds are for players with no time to mythic raid and or not confident in their skill. Well, the time for mythic raiding is, of course, fairly severe. Because it's not even just the time to do mythic raids these days. It's the extra stuff you have to do alongside it. Which I'm hoping will be less onerous in BFA. But it will still be there. It's quite clear it will still be there. So it will still be more onerous than in every expansion before Legion. What am I talking? I can't even think. It's too hot. Terrence, you play video games to have fun, not to stress. But, you know, to compete is to be stressed. You need to put yourself under some stress to enjoy it, don't you? You need a bit of stress. Well, I need a bit of stress. I always need, and again, this is something I'm going to pick up on Friday when I basically give my life story. And I'm not kidding. Well, after a certain point. But I always need one hobby to provide my competitive outlet. And by definition, that means a stressful one. Not too stressful, of course. Not frustrating levels of stress. Stress that, you know, pushes you to do something that you can be proud of afterwards. You know that there are people from different servers creating their own community in places like Discord. Exactly, yes. Now, Blizzard said that the communities was not about challenging Discord. Not sure I believe that. Creating their own community in places like Discord and such to do heroic raiding with their mains, but as well as with their alts. Yeah, well, people have done that for years, of course. They raid with one guild with their mains, and then usually join a much lower progress guild on an alt on days when they're not raiding with their main guild. Some people just do that. ESO Craven is real. No, not for me. See, Elder Scrolls Online, I absolutely love it as a casual player. I think it's way better than WoW as a casual player. However, I would not like to play that competitively. Because, like, as much as obviously recently I've been bashing Blizzard's design philosophies, that's only because I want a great game to be even better. the whole package is still really good. I'm really happy on balance with their design, not just class design. I'm not happy with their class design. But other design aspects I'm mostly fairly happy about. I'm not with ESO. At the high end, at the non-casual end, I don't think it's good. You know, anything where you have animation cancelling. Think of it this way. When there was animation cancelling with Demon Hunters in the Legion beta, Blizzard knocked it on the head immediately. They weren't having that. That was not going to be a thing. Because it's bad. It's bad design. ESO, it's there with everything, not just one ability. Anyway. How is stress and a challenge different? They're not. To be a challenge, there has to be stress. There has to be stress. Otherwise, it's not a challenge by definition. You're not competing if there's no stress. Because that's what a challenge means, isn't it? It means you're doing something that requires you to be at your best, and even then, you may not succeed. Talking class debuffs, why are they really important? Because you cannot get them any other way. But for dungeons, they're less important. They're much more important in raids. I'll cover this again in the video, but I can go over it now anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's take the Demon Hunter debuff. So that means they put that debuff on the target, which is not a separate ability, they just attack it. And that target will take 5% extra spell damage from all sources. So in a dungeon, let's say you've got a Demon Hunter, and let's say you've got 2 casters. So it's effectively, that target is going to take, I don't know what proportionally a Demon Hunter's damage is magic damage, because obviously some of it's physical damage. Let's say about half of their damage is physical. I don't know. It might be a bit less. It might be a bit more. Someone may know. But let's say it's about half. So that means that target is going to take an extra 12.5% damage. So that's useful to have. But in a raid, you might well have 5 casters. I'm not saying you would, but you might. You might have a couple of mages, a warlock, a boomkin, and a shadow priest, say. In addition, there are some melee who do spell damage. I do a lot of spell damage. Most of my damage is holy damage. So that would benefit from it as well. Okay? An enhancement shaman, same sort of thing. A death knight, same sort of thing. So you might do the equivalent of another 2 whole DPS's worth of spell damage as well. So that's 7 DPS. Then at the start of the fight, there might be some healers who don't need to do much healing, so they do some DPS. So before you know it, you might have about it might be taking about 40% extra damage. So it's worth a lot to a raid. And that 40% could even mean, if you don't have a Demon Hunter in your raid, it might mean bringing someone out that's not as well geared. As long as they're geared enough to be able to can't think of words now, survive, and also that their damage isn't woeful. Let's say they do about 70% damage of a main. That's still good enough. That's still worth it. That's still worth taking them. So, and it might not be an alt that you have to bring. You might just bring someone who's shit. You know, so the shit's Demon Hunter, because they're the only one you've got in your guild, gets taken every fight because their debuff is enough to compensate for their shitness. You know, so you've got that situation. That's why it's a big deal. For dungeons, less so. You know, there are more important things in the dungeon than that extra 12.5% damage. Which a Demon Hunter may still bring. I'm not saying they don't. But the debuff alone isn't enough. Enhancement Shaman does about 90% magic damage in BFA. Well, you know. Reds do a bit less, actually, because more of it at the moment... Although, that's going to check. You know, more of it at the moment is physical. However, our Mastery is going to be buffed soon. So that should... But I think it'll still be more than in Legion. But it'll still be mostly holy damage. It'll be far more holy damage than physical damage. Healer balance is all over the place. All balance is all over the place right now. Balancing has just started. You know. Before they can balance, they always have to get the abilities sorted. And they're still, at the moment, they're in the crossover thing now. They've started to balance because the abilities are sort of set, but they also know there's a few abilities need tweaking as well, but not severely tweaking. Remember, the abilities have to be sort of set, really, for 2 weeks' time. But the tuning doesn't have to be done for 2.5 months. Which is because they do the tuning, they get it close-ish, then the raid will open up, normal and heroic. Then after that, they'll do another tuning pass. Then the first week of Mythic, then they'll do another tuning pass. At which point, that's the point at which they expect to be able to leave it alone. But sometimes over the first few weeks, you also get little tweaks as well. You're not saying it's a problem, but certain classes like Druid and Shaman will see an increase in overheal. Absorbs also mean less damage to heal. So there's less healing to do overall. Well, that's always the way. That's been an issue at various points during WoW. If someone puts, like, oh, I know Disciplined Priest is changing again, but, you know, Disciplined Priest before Legion, you know, just shield everyone. Boom, 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 boom. Obviously, absorbs are really good. Because it means you don't take the damage in the first place. Because you can't heal someone when they're dead. There are already really powerful Mythic Plus dungeon groups with 3 or 4 Windwalker monks. 4 if you don't take a healer. Giving such a powerful debuff to that spec only makes it even more so. In the case of monks specifically, yes, that is true. Yes. Which is perhaps why maybe they shouldn't have given it to monks. Although bear in mind the Brewmaster would also bring it if you had a Brewmaster tank. But I don't know how Brewmaster tanks are looking for Mythic Plus in BFA. Hang on a minute. What the fuck is happening? You've got to be kidding me. How are Japan beating Belgium? Why did no one tell me? What the hell? What's going on with this World Cup? This World Cup is a farce. All the footballing nations of the world are tumbling out. God, Bennett. Sorry, hang on. I'll just regain my composure now. Where was I? Sorry. You doubt Disc will have enough free GCDs to cover the whole raid? I certainly hope not. That was a... But you know what? In WoD, right? In the guild I was in WoD, which was a good guild, by the way. At various points during my time there, England might well win. How bizarre would that... Brazil are playing well at the moment, though, so Brazil are probably going to win it. But still. All the most powerful footballing nations are just... They're off. They're gone. Anyway, sorry. I was saying something. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So we had various discipline priests. We had one of them was good, but then we had 2 others that were bad, but they were bad in different ways. One of the discipline priests would just go around shielding everyone in the raid, but occasionally tanks would die because they weren't really giving them any special attention. But everyone had their shields. And they used to go ape shit at the Shadow Priest if they used a shield on themselves. Absolutely ape shit. You've never seen an explosion like it. Gordon Bennett. We wouldn't hear the end of it. Or they wouldn't. And that one buggered off because they were useless. And then we had another Shadow Priest. They were completely the opposite. They were all about putting our big absorbs on the tanks. Huge absorbs. Those tanks weren't dying. The rest of us, fuck us. You know, we weren't getting anything. And then we had one discipline priest who actually managed to do both things, which was nice. Put it this way, healers in a raid without a disc priest will necessarily pass higher than those with one. Not saying passes matter to healers. It matters to everyone, but it shouldn't. Or all roles, I should say. Not to every player, of course. I don't. But it's necessarily true because of the nature of absorbs. Well, you know, sorry. Monks are looking good for Mythic Plus in BFA, at least the same as in Legion. What do you mean, Brewmaster monks? I know Windwalkers would be. You're from Germany. Oh, no. Disaster. Yeah, Brewmasters. I'm missing the point. Sorry, what point have I missed? Healers in a raid without a disc priest will necessarily pass higher than those with. I have no sympathy for people if their focus is on passes, though. If people want to do it, that's up to them and their guild. But I have no interest in supporting it. I cannot believe what I am seeing. What is going on? There's no injuries, are there? I mean, you know, De Bruyne... I've not been watching it. Sorry, I am paying attention to you. But I'm assuming De Bruyne, Hazard and Lukaku are all on the pitch. How on earth is this scoreline even possibly? Someone's comments here. Sorry if you don't understand football. Southgate is a genius. Deliberately lost to Belgium to avoid the mighty Japan. Oh my god. MDI is not called Method Drama Invitational, but Monk Damage Invite. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I could query the choice of giving monks that particular debuff, but they've done it. That's the thing. Do you know what as well? We were so close as paladins. We were so close to convincing our developer to give us an aura that meant within a certain range, everyone did 3% extra damage as holy. A damage buff. We were that close. And then Blizzard pulled the plug. Who's going to win that World Cup? Brazil have got to be favourites. France, you know, France are always... You never know what you're going to get with France. They either play magnificently or they beat each other up and you know, embarrass themselves. So, but I think Brazil, my money would be on... Well, my money's gone. That's it. At the start of a World Cup, I always put a certain amount of money on a betting website, okay? And that's... And once it's gone, it's gone. I have not got a gambling habit. So once it's gone, it's gone. And it's now gone. Because if Belgium don't win, all right, there's time. If they don't win, then those are my last bets gone. Because I've lost all my money on the most ridiculous results you've ever seen in your life. If Gnomes got a noticeable DPS increase over any other class as a paladin, hypothetically, would I consider playing a gnome? That comment is not even worthy of consideration, of course not. And it's never going to happen. But if it did happen, no, under no circumstances. They want to get more people to play monks as a special snowflake. I don't, do they though? I've not heard them say that. I know that for paladins, there is sometimes, I know that there's a desire to keep a lid on us because we're really popular. It's a really popular class to play. It always has been. Not because of, you know, any particular class design. It's just, you know, from a role-playing point of view, who doesn't want to be a holy warrior? You know, paragon of virtue, all the rest of it. So... I mean, the reason I played is I played it in Dungeons & Dragons. The reason I wanted to play it in Dungeons & Dragons was exactly that reason. Even in Dungeons & Dragons, it was a bit shit. So, you know, I'm used to that. But I know Blizzard, for that reason, don't ever want... Because sometimes, you know, a class gets a bit overpowered, and Blizzard don't worry too much about it. They sort of try and rein it back, but they don't worry too much. But when it's a paladin, instant nerf, because they don't want... It's bad enough all the people who want to play paladins playing paladins. They don't want to have people playing it because they think it's flavour of the month, because then the paladin population will explode. But there you go. Brazil. Well, Neymar is a petulant child is the main thing with him. But when Brazil are playing well, then they're a joy to watch. Unless you're playing against them, in which case they're a horror to watch. Am I worried that Blizzard's focus on Mythic Plus dungeons may take the steam out of Mythic raiding? I'm not sure that I would agree that Blizzard have that focus on Mythic Plus dungeons. I'm not saying I disagree either, by the way. But I am concerned about the future of Mythic Plus raiding, yes. That is... Mythic raiding, sorry. Yes. You know, this thing with the cache, for example, the Mythic Plus cache. Because part of it was me thinking, I was thinking, okay, you know, the Mythic Plus with the MDIs, obviously helping them get into esports. Raiding doesn't do that. So I could well understand them favouring in their, you know, bid to get more into esports. I could well imagine them favouring Mythic Dungeons over Mythic Raids in certain aspects, definitely. But the rewards from the caches has got nothing to do with that. That doesn't affect the MDIs. So why is that a thing? Why would they make that as a thing? Because there's two problems with this multiple pieces of gear or random pieces of gear from the Mythic Plus cache. One is it's a recipe for disappointment in almost everyone. It's like you please a small number of people and embitter everyone else. And even the small number of people that are pleased are only pleased that week. The rest of the time, they're embittered as well. So it's lose-lose. I don't understand it. But the second problem with it is a Mythic Raider, right? So first week, you're only getting heroic gear. Best is you're getting heroic gear. Might Titan Forge, but that's what you're getting. Second week, you kill a few Mythic bosses. You're not clearing it. You kill a few Mythic bosses. Balance of probability is with personal loot, you're probably not getting any loot. Or maybe you get an average of one per piece of loot. I haven't worked it out. I don't actually know what the percentage drop rate is going to be anyway. But maybe you get an average of one piece of loot. That's straight away less than it is for the Mythic Plus cache. So the Mythic Plus cache is going to award most people more Mythic raiding quality gear than Mythic raiding. Not equal, more. And then you add in the fact that doing your Mythic Plus dungeon runs, you might get some gear that Titan forges at the end of it. When will get Frost Mage tanks? What we should get first of all is ranged specs for every class that doesn't have them. It happened for Warriors. Sorry, what happened for Warriors? Warriors never get smashed down when they get something overpowered. If they want to even out the class numbers a bit, I don't think they're going the right way about it. And I also don't see why they should want to even out the class numbers. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit what the class numbers are like? Why do Blizzard care? As long as what they should want to do is maximise the number of people that want to play World of Warcraft. As long as there's a class that people can get excited about, who gives a crap what the balance is? People should be able to play what class they want for the role they want to play. That's all Blizzard need to do for class design. Encourage that. Yeah, Frostmage tanks. Warlock tanks should be first, really, surely. You know. How is Ret in Mythic Plus? I don't really know for BFA. I suspect it'll be very similar to Legion. It's really good up to a point, like really strong up to a point. But then if you're going for your world first type levels, you wouldn't take a Ret Paladin. How do I feel about them removing the ability to swap Mythic gear? I've already done a whole video on that. He put out a video against the change. I disagree massively. Absolutely massively. With the whole concept of the disagreements. It's not an issue for me. The arguments that people have used against it either boil down to they don't understand how it works in BFA, or they don't understand that if something affects everyone equally, it's not a big deal, or they don't understand that, so, you know, there's always an imbalance of strength of classes in dungeons anyway, so it doesn't even affect that. Or, what's the other one? There's another argument some people come up with. Or it's an issue of class design. You know. So there is nothing. The whole idea that you would even want to have multiple sets of gear is a bit weird. Think about what this game is, right? It's a role-playing game. So we're basically playing a character that we might read about in a fantasy story, a book. Okay? Think about Lord of the Rings. I'm sure we've all read Lord of the Rings. All fantasy players have read Lord of the Rings. I don't really remember in Lord of the Rings, Aragorn or Boromir, you know, when they, you know, fought off the orcs as they got through Moria and they were about to go into Lothlorien. I don't remember reading about either of those two going, hold on, lads, I need to change into my forest gear. Okay? They have their gear with their magical artifacts and stuff like that. That's their gear. That's the fantasy role-playing model. The fact that there's even multiple bits of gear we swap around for any reason at all in the game, other than simply equipping what is the... You know, we get a new piece of gear. Is it an upgrade on what I've got or not? No, it's not. Now, I understand that it's not possible to design the game so that everything is either an upgrade, in which case we equip it, or it's not, in which case we chuck it away. I get that. So we are going to always have sets. But that is moving away from the fantasy trope. But the idea that you'd want to swap them in and out whilst doing the same piece of content, no. I was talking about class design issues. Videos were just too damn sarcastic. Well, I haven't watched it, but no one has relayed to me any argument that's actually against them stopping the reversing this. The only argument I can think of for them not doing it is that there's no need to do it. I don't actually understand what the need is there for. You know, that's the only reason I could think. But no one's using that argument. No one's even wanted to use that argument. They keep talking about, because here's the thing, like one of the most prevalent arguments is, well, these classes don't have very good natural defensive, so they have to use defensive trinkets. But if they have to use that across the whole dungeon, then that means they'll do less damage, they'll be weaker, blah, blah, blah. But even in that specific case, which is still an issue of class design, but even in that specific issue, even if you can swap your sets around, that means at some point in that dungeon, you're going to switch to that defensive set. That means you're doing less damage. That means that the encounter, whether it's trash or boss, is going to die that bit slower. And for people pushing high mythic keys, because all these people tell me, this is about pushing high mythic keys. When you are pushing high mythic keys, every second counts. So this still wouldn't take you even for that. Doesn't matter that you're wearing defensives all through the dungeon, or that you're not wearing defensive. If you're using them at all, you're costing the group those seconds. So it's an issue of class design. It's not an issue of whether you can swap your gear around or not. Do I know? I know nothing about enhancement shamans other than that enhancement shaman players are not happy. That's all I know about it. I'm afraid. I will take their word for it that it's not great, but I do not know. I have no concept. I didn't even play much Shaman in Legion. So even if I had played it in BFA, which I haven't, I couldn't even compare it really. So I'm afraid not. I just have to take the word of senior Enhancement Shaman players that all is not well in the world of Enhancement Shaman. Yeah, gear swapping is not a particular hassle. No, yeah, you can hotbar gear sets up. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. No one is ever happy. Well, no, this is true, but you do expect senior members of a community of a spec to, because most people just want their spec to be the most powerful because, you know, they're not actually very good and they don't want to compete, so they just want their class to do the competing for them. But you expect the more senior members of a community to take a more balanced view, and they simply want the tools to be able to compete. You know, that's why I only ever moan about utility. I don't moan about anything else about res. I'm more than happy with everything else. I just want the tools to compete. You know, I don't need my class to be designed to make it easier for me to do that. Where do I think ret stands? What? Oh, no, pay no attention. If you talk about damage, pay no attention to anyone even mentioning that. The tuning has only just started. I know a little bit about their intentions for where they want to move with it, but how it'll all finish up at the end, no one can say, not even Blizzard. Also remember, when you look at people, when eventually these comparison sims come out, and if you see any comparison sims in the next month, be aware that in the next month there is no way that there are going to be SimCraft modules finalized for all those specs. Like Ret Paladin Simcraft tends to be one of the 4 or 5 that's done the most quickly because we've got people who are really on top of that. And even then, there are things that go wrong with it, things that don't work. So, you know. Oh, Belgium. Okay, they're back on, aren't they? Oh, there's time yet. There's time yet. What's this? 20 minutes left. Ah, dear. Who scored it? But, oh, Jesus. Anyway, sorry. You'd have had no chance if I'd have tried to do this tomorrow when England were playing. For me, the main upside to changing gear sets in Dungeons is having a speed set for doing skips. But again, you know, I don't like the concept in Dungeons of skips as well. The fact that I don't even know if they're possible in BFA. They probably are. The whole concept of skipping something, you know, like in Blackrook Hold when you could do the invisibility thing and you know, and someone, you'd die, but someone would battle res you at the end of it, at the first boss. Don't like that. Don't like the whole concept of that sort of thing. I think you should have to go through everything. I can understand going past trash such that you don't pull it, you know, like in, it's the one near Emerald Nightmare. I've forgotten the bloody name of these. What the crap? Dark Art Thicket. You know, so there's a fair amount of trash you miss out on your way to the first boss there, unless someone's clumsy, because you jump up on the mushroom and round and blah, blah, blah. But I don't like skips. So, you know, and one of the reasons I don't like it is because it is another way in which you empower some classes over others, because some classes can do it and some can't. You know, stealthing classes are particularly good for that, of course. Let's have a look. You had 2 gear sets for Mythic Plus, AoE and single target. I mean, I had a few. I had a speed set that you could use for like longish runs between packs or running back. I had a Don't Trust the Tank set, which was basically cheat death braces and potentially Pride as if I really didn't trust them. You know, stuff like that. And yes, I did at one time have one that was more tuned towards AoE than single target, but unfortunately, in Antorus, I haven't been able to get the decent AoE trinket. So for AoE purposes, it's not really worth me swapping out. Although my single target trinket is no good either, because I lose too much damage on it with packs, which is what you get most of the time. Where do they want to go with Ret? They want more AoE than it currently has, put it that way. They know that the AoE is much weaker than it's intended to be. And I also know that they want to buff Templar's Verdicts in Divine Storm. Don't expect it to get buffed to the point where it'll be useful for 2-target cleave, except with Divine Judgment. I also know that they're going to buff Divine... There's a few things they're going to buff that's on their to-do list. Divine Judgment is one of them. As a fire mage, you had 8 different sets. Oh, Belgium scored again. Oh, good. I'm watching a stream, so it's delayed. All right, maybe my bet's still on. The issue is that they made it so that the dungeons have far more trash than the mob count. Blizzard could fix it by increasing the amount of mobs you need to kill and the amount of time you have. I don't know. Isn't there a strategy in minimising the number of mobs you kill while still getting the correct mob count? Oh, I've just seen it now. Oh, the Japanese coach doesn't look happy. But, yeah, so I think the strategy in choosing the right path to minimise, you know, the amount of time you need on it. So I'm okay with excess trash to try and waylay the unwary. Although, what I particularly hate... Well, it wasn't Fellaini that scored it, was it? Jesus Christ. There's one bit I don't like, which is Dark Art Thicket, when you've got to ride and jump around the thing, because that's one where with the Dryads, just before the mushroomy things, because there's certain classes that can root one of the Dryads that would otherwise prevent you doing that. And even when you can do that, I always have a hard time actually doing the jumpy thing. I eventually get there, but I waste everyone's time because I don't do it often enough. But that I don't like, because it's like, if you have this class or this class, you could do it, and if you don't, then you can't. Again, things like that, skips that are possible only if you have this particular class, shouldn't exist. Should not exist. And that would be easy to stop as well. Just move that trash pack in the middle of the bloody path. Instantly cut that out. Would a good idea to make consecration based? No, no! Consecration is a shit ability to have baseline. People stopped saying that. It's terrible when it was last baseline. Terrible. Or when you could last have it effectively baseline. And it was a talent, but still. No to consecration. It's fine as a talent. Dark Art Thicket, not in Dark Art Thicket, not in Blackrock Hold. You don't believe. You must kill more trash than you need to reach 100% if you don't skip things. Well, that, yeah, well, it's something like that's just probably someone in the design team not adding it up right then. You should always need to kill more trash than you need to kill to get, because the whole point of the trash count is to stop you just taking the most direct route to the bosses, isn't it? It's to give you so obviously if just doing the most efficient routes between bosses naturally gets you the amount of trash you need, then it's failed at that point, hasn't it, if we're honest. If your tank does it right, they can pull that dried on its own. Yeah, if I was the tank, that wouldn't be happening. You'd be quite lucky if I didn't pull the whole instance on its own. Right, my bet's looking a bit safer anyway. That's good. I can rescue some money out of this World Cup. After this, I'll probably just keep betting on England. And then if I lose, I won't really care. You believe both the GCD and gear set changes were made with the MDI and esports in mind? Yeah, I've heard a few people say that. I'm not sure I agree with the GCD thing. I suppose it's possible with the gear set. But the problem is, my issue with that argument is, all right, the GCD thing, maybe, but I don't buy it. But the gear swap thing, they could just make that a thing for MDIs, couldn't they? There's no need to bring that into the wider game. That could just be a special tournament rule for MDIs that they put in. So, yeah, I'm not. And of course, people serious about MDIs would of course have to practice doing the ones in game without swapping their gear. That would be part of their preparation for it. So I don't buy that, and I'm not really sold on the GCD thing, although I also don't dismiss the GCD thing. Second, to promote a strategic choice at the start of the run. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. That's why I wasn't against it when Blizzard announced it. I just thought I was completely neutral on it. You know, my initial thoughts were they don't need to do that, so why are they doing it? Because I could see it was going to be unpopular. But at the same time, you're quite right. It offers a strategic thing. It's like, it's the same with talents. It's the same strategy that we've had to do in Legion with talents anyway. If you've got talents that make you really good at AoE but not so good at single target, or vice versa, identify what you're going to struggle the most. What is going to be the make or break of this dungeon? And talent accordingly. And now you're going to have to gear accordingly. It's coming home. I think it's a bit early to say that yet. We haven't yet put in a good performance against a good team. But no, I think Belgium are now showing their... I'm not watching it. I've no idea. I'm assuming that they're exerting themselves. You know, what have they got now? They've got 10 more minutes, plus potentially extra time. Surely whatever happened to get them 2-0 down is ended now. Surely. Anyway. You're on the fence for BFA. You're pretty much a casual due to work commitments. Been following little bits. But you're thinking of going healer for PvP and PvE. Well, I'm not exactly hyped for it. I've said that before, but you know. Gear set change is very good for MDI. For the audience, it would be much more transparent what the players are doing. I mean, you can argue both ways, can't you? But I'm not sure I believe that it's done for MDI purposes, because it's something they could implement just for MDI without having to bring it into the game for everyone else. There's only so many people play MDI. Do you think they will let Kulturan humans be paladins? I don't know. I don't think they need to. But one thing that I thought was curious... Well, I've got two thoughts about it. One is that I noticed, although it was placeholder gear, whilst Borealis was being created during the alpha, there was an awful lot of paladin placeholder gear put in place. Like, for example, in the harbour where you've got that cannon, that was the Uther statue from Stormwind. You also had a load of Silverhand tombs everywhere. You know, so there was lots of paladin paraphernalia there. And I was thinking, does that mean it? But then the other thing is this. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but just as with Zandalari Trolls, I think they've data mined the class choices for Kulturans. Now, although Zandalari Trolls have been data mined as not being for Paladins, that's because I think the way the storyline is going, spoilers, but the way the storyline is going is that they're going along a trajectory that's going to bring Zandalari Troll Paladins. But it won't be ready yet. And that's why at the moment the option isn't ticked for them. But with Kulturan humans, I don't really see a storyline emerging which would explain why they don't have them to begin with, but acquire them later on. So I don't really see that they would, and I don't think they need to either. If you hadn't pre-ordered and wasn't invested in your guild, you wouldn't play BFA. But you have pre-ordered. Orson Welles Paladin. Well, they also have the skinny Kulturans as well, remember. They've got both types. But yeah, so I think on balance, I mean, I don't know, but if I had to guess, I would probably think the signs are not there for Kulturan Paladins. But there's no reason why not. I mean, they were part of the alliance when the Paladin orders were formed, when Silverhand was formed. But I haven't seen any example of Paladins either in Kulturas. So that's another, aspect to it. Rosebud, which wasn't actually supposed to be in there, I think that was him messing his line up or something. And then they kept it in. If you look at class templates in the files, all classes are actually Paladins as default. Yes. Were there Kulturan Paladins in Warcraft 3? I can't remember. Or do you mean Warcraft 2? Do you mean Warcraft 3? Kulturas appeared it started in Warcraft 2, and that's also where Paladins first appeared. I don't remember. It's too long ago now. I haven't played even Warcraft 3 since about 2004. So I'm afraid I don't know. Oh dear. Japan don't seem to understand they're supposed to be losing this game. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I've seen that. I was getting worried when it was 2-0 to Japan. I'm still mildly concerned that Belgium haven't wrapped it up now that they've scored their 2 goals. Don't understand what's going on. I know Japan are a very well organised team. But, I mean, the fact that they were 2-0 up and couldn't hold on to that lead shows that Belgium have got what it takes to break them down, and yet they're still pissing about. It's like, what, 7 minutes to go? 6 minutes to go? Come on. Got a bet riding on this. Anyway, never mind that. Never mind. You're a human paladin, but would love to be a Kulturan human paladin. The Dark Iron Dwarf does look very enticing. If I'd have stayed as Alliance, I would absolutely have wanted a Dark Iron something. On balance, I wouldn't have changed my character to a Dark Iron paladin. But I would definitely have wanted a Dark Iron something. I was thinking of changing my warrior to Dark Iron. I don't want... No, those penalties yesterday already cost me. They wiped out all my bets. I thought yesterday should have been the easiest results to predict in the whole of the last 16. Where have I moved? I moved to Kazakh as Horde. Dark Iron Dwarf Warlock. Yeah. No, I think I'd have done a warrior. You want something, as any sort of dwarf, you want something sort of meaty. Oh, they were nearly there. But, because that's another thing with it being Kazakh, big server. I don't know how it's going to be on expansion patch day. But again, expansion patch day, expansion launch day even. I mean, the good thing is that when it launches, I have 2 weeks off work. So it won't be the pain in the arse that it was for every other expansion when I've had to work. Lordaeron events on launch, will the servers handle it? Yeah. The server. Forget about WoD was a freak event. The hardware will totally cope with it. There may be queues on large servers. That's a different thing. But they'll absolutely cope with it. Legion, remember, it copes with Legion beautifully. Lightforged Draenei Paladin. No. I don't actually know how strong the racial is going to be realistically for BFA. I haven't seen anyone sim that yet, but I really hope not. It's terrible. I can't believe I've switched to enemy lines. I've told you, I'm aiming to bring down the Horde from the inside. I'm a 5th colonist. You know, I've already explained. And Blizzard are helping me out, as we'll notice here, because, you know... Oh, dear. Let's try that again. That one. Because just before the Blizzard posted that, you know, I was explaining to someone that I was persuading Sylvanas to get the gnomes to join the Horde. That was my attempt to bring down the Horde. And then Blizzard go and, print that. So it's all fitted together. This is actually what's going to happen. In fact, you heard it here first. That is going to be the storyline of BFA. That Sylvanas is going to... She's already said in... I've lost it now. Before the Storm, the novel... Do you know, those who've read it, she thinks it, she doesn't say it, but she thinks it. She thinks she'd rather the Tauren just fucked off and joined the Alliance. But she needs them, so she doesn't tell them to piss off. Whereas, you know, the storyline is clearly going to develop. It's very, very obvious Bane would rather be in the Alliance, that the Tauren would rather be in the Alliance. So, a sensible swap... where Sylvanas agrees to let the Tauren go in return for getting the gnomes. It's obvious, really, when you think about it. Is the disparity of Horde and Alliance that bad for you? Yes. It's dreadful. For Mythic raiding, it's an absolute shocker. It's a disaster. Like, for me, going from Alliance to Horde is not... It's a huge minus. I cannot... state strongly enough, because I've done it before as well. I did it, well, ironically, at the same point in WoD. You know, I mean, the raiding is more important, so I don't moan about it. But I would far prefer to be Alliance, far. Someone with a Lightforge Passion, the racial can definitely get you out of a bind. Blizzard just needs to tweak the numbers a bit. Columbia is not winning tomorrow. No chance. No chance. I'm getting I got a roughly equal payout on that, a little less if I'm honest, on Belgium and England both winning, which means Belgium had better bloody win. It's the last bet I've got. If I lose that bet, I've got no more money to bet for the rest of the tournament. So I need this. Even then, I'd be left... I'll be on an overall loss. From now on in, I'm only betting on games that I'm fairly confident of, which obviously gets harder as you go on. Feeling kind of sad for the Tauren. First, Garrosh didn't want those other races in his Horde. Now Sylvanas wants to throw out the Tauren too. Exactly. Well, they should. They should join the alliance. I've said that without thinking about it. As long as it's a swap with the gnomes. I don't particularly fancy... I mean, I'm stuck in it. I've gone Horde anyway, so I've got to put up with Taurens in my raid group. So, yeah. But no, storyline-wise, it's fairly obvious they'd been far happier in the alliance. Because even Thrall, who brought... You know, the Taurens' ties with the Horde are with Thrall, who's largely... Okay, he still identifies as Horde, but he's largely neutral. And actually, they helped, the storyline-wise anyway, get the Forsaken into the Horde, for which Sylvanas should be bloody grateful, instead of whining about them. But there you go. I'm also not particularly keen on playing on both factions, because I like my alts to be useful to me. They're not really useful to me on another faction. Sylvanas will die and Kalia will take over. No. Already told you, Kalia is the route to having some Alliance Undead as an allied race. That's what Kalia exists for. Blizzard will finally end the faction war. They'll end the faction war when Warcraft dies and allow everyone to PvE together. That would be a lovely thought, but they will not. Then they'll create unique PvP factions. No, they won't. They won't do anything to fundamentally change the game. They've long ago lost either the impetus or the ability to innovate. So they won't do anything like that. They're not interested. But yeah, we are. I'm quite sure of it. I'm semi-sure of it. You know, Alliance Undead. That Before the Storm novel made no sense unless that's what they're leading up to. No sense at all. Obviously not imminently, because you know they've still got 2 waves of allied races that we know about to come. And we know that they're not going to come thick and fast. Even Blizzard have said that. Sylvanas has far too big a fan base to die. I agree, not for the same reason, but I think she's too big. I think she's the biggest character in WoW. I think she's untouchable. Have they actually won 3-2? Or 2 people have said it must be true. Oh, there you go then. I mean, it's not looking likely where I'm looking at the moment, because at the moment I'm looking at Japan about to take a free kick in range of goal. But I'll take your word for it that they must score on the break or something when it goes tits up. So is my bet intact then, or are you just trolling me and it's actually Japan that have won 3-2? Because I'm really not seeing enough time for Belgium to do anything. Yeah, but you've trolled me before, Frozen, so I'm not believing you. I'll find out soon enough. Well, let's see then, because at the moment this is a Japanese corner. All right, they're doing it on the break. Should you play Ret Pally or Enhanced Shaman in BFA? Oh dear. Is that a choice? That's a bit like a choice between getting chlamydia or gonorrhea, isn't it? Well, with the fuss that enhancement shamans are making at the moment, I would say Ret Paladin. Because, you know. But I don't know. I really can't say what... Oh, okay, this has just happened. You weren't trolling me. Caught on the break. How embarrassing. You got your own corner, and then you end up losing a goal from it. So yeah, if you just go by the amount of complaints from the relative communities, the enhancement shaman's really not happy. Retribution Paladin community, not that unhappy. I'm the most unhappy, I think. So yeah. But I also, with the enhancement shaman, I'm assuming, again, it's something about the nature. I don't think it's a tuning thing, because people always lynch onto, oh, does that mean they're doing less damage? Because tuning, as I say, tuning will be tuned. I'm assuming there must be something fundamentally wrong with the way they deal damage. Because when you get something like that wrong, tuning won't help you. Did I watch Talison's video on melee DPS? No. I was going to, because I was... See, the first time they ever did one of those videos, it was a comparison one, and I went, oh, what's this? And it turned out they were only comparing it based on how much they enjoyed playing it. Fair enough, fine. But then when I looked at the description in the video, and it said they were comparing damage, I thought, no. Because no one can compare damage at the moment. And they're not even theory crafters, so they have no idea of even what the developers are planning for the respective classes. So I'm not going to watch a video that's a bit naughty. You never got a notification? Oh, didn't you? Oh dear. Sorry, we've nearly finished. You know, we're coming to an end just like Japan. So, yeah, we're going to last 5 minutes more than Japan, though. Wouldn't normally be on a Monday, of course. This was just purely because... And I can't promise... Again, I haven't looked at the match fixtures for next week either. But yeah, this is just because England are playing tomorrow. The video wasn't about damage too much from... Yeah, but it said it was in the description. I would hope it wasn't about damage at all. And that it was purely about which ones they liked playing. Because that is the only thing they could possibly make a comparison on. A high-level look at each spec. What do you mean by a high-level look at each spec? You've got Sweden win. It says too dodgy. See, the Switzerland-Sweden game, I haven't put a bet on at all. I think it's Switzerland should win. But I'm not, you know, Sweden have looked all right. I'm not sure. I wouldn't like to put any money on that. But Switzerland should win. And I don't just mean because they're higher ranked. I mean, they looked quite good in the group stages as well. Do I see any indicator when the pre-patch will hit? Yes, I've told you. I've been telling you for weeks. 2 weeks' time. In fact, I will tell you the exact date. 17th in North America, 18th in Europe. I've been saying for weeks. Taliesin is pretty tall. Are they? Not. I've never met them. I mean, I can't tell just by comparing them either, because everyone that they associate with might be midgets. It means they didn't get anything into a detail, just an overview. Well, they can't get into anything in detail. That's my point. Even experts in the classes can't get into anything detailed, because the experts are only expert in their own class and spec, which means you can't really compare it with others. As I say, the SimCraft modules haven't even been built and for all classes, and even the ones that have been built are not all working perfectly. That alpha business with Rhett kind of blew up then. I remember pretty thrilled. Well, I'm still thrilled about the thing I was thrilled about at the time. So what they did is they completely changed all the talents, and it was marvellous. It's still marvellous. That is still really good, and he totally deserved those cookies I sent. Absolutely no question. The problem is, I thought that was a taste of things to come. And I was actually thinking about next time, do I send more cookies or should I send champagne as a thank you? But unfortunately, we didn't get anything else. So since that initial thing, we haven't actually got anything in the half a year since. We've had tweaks on the things that were already there. We haven't had anything actually extra or any of the bad things removing. Did I see that Blizz announced starting today you can't advertise for... Yes, people have said that. Thanks. Yeah. Well, I didn't. They didn't say it was started today. I didn't know about that, but yes, people have mentioned that. When and if do you think we'll see old gods in BFA? First raid. It's not a proper old boss, but Gahoon is an old boss. Is an old boss an old god? Did you say what? Hang on. Old god. I'd rather say old boss. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Gahoon is an old god. He's a manufactured old god, but he's still an old god. So first raid. Really. But if you're thinking of N'Zoth, don't know. I'm thinking end of the expansion. Legion pre-patch was 6 weeks before. Was it? Really? Don't remember it being that long. But I don't know. But it's certainly not this time. Do I think that Gilneas might be reclaimed by the Alliance over the span of BFA? No. I'm not ruling it out completely. I mean, for example, they might do a Warfront based on Gilneas. But I don't think so. And one of the reasons I don't think so, although it wouldn't be impossible, is Gilneas is still the seed of the Rogue Legendary from WoD, isn't what? MOP. And I don't think there's much of an impetus to it. Like, there's no storyline of Gen wanting to reclaim it. Even before the Storm novel, there was no suggestions or undertones of him wanting to reclaim it. I spoiled them with cookies and they're waiting for more to fix. They're not getting... They're not there to encourage them to do something. They are a reward for things that are already done. That's how rewards work. You have to do the thing first, then you get the reward. So he did the really good thing, which is still a really good thing, and he got cookies and muffins. Hasn't done anything good since. And it may not be his fault. I accept that some of the things may be coming from upstairs. Cthulhu is an old boss, though. He is an old boss, yes. Pre-patch will land next week. No, it won't. Where are we? Sorry. Wish they would sort Gilneas. But they don't do these things. They use a thing when it's useful for a particular expansion, and then they just leave it in its state. And occasionally they decide to use it for another storyline, but they never go back to tidy up loose ends, ever. Again, burn the tree in order to make the Alliance retake their city. Well, if that's the reason he did it, then it went a bit wrong, didn't it? Because they end up retaking Lordaeron. And when I say retaking, I use that word in its loosest possible sense because it's not really something you can re-inhabit when we finish with it. And set himself up as king from behind the wall. Yes, very good. I'm not sending more cookies. They get cookies for good things, for doing good. It's not a bribe. I'm not into corruption. No bribes. Will Lordaeron become an Alliance hub at some point? There'd have to be a hell of a cleanup operation take place. Maybe it's intended for the future. I don't know. It seems to me, though, again, we always have to bear in mind we cannot assume that Blizzard have any follow-through with any of their plot devices. It seems to me the reason for the burning of Teldrassil and for the Siege of Lordaeron was to do one thing, and that was to have one continent for Horde and one for Alliance. I know the Draenei and the Blood Elves make a mess of it. But by and large, you know, Kalimdor is now going to be Horde and Eastern Kingdoms is going to be Alliance. For whatever reason they want that, I still don't actually understand what reason they want that, but they want that. And I think it's just for that. And I think it's just for that one goal, and at which point they'll leave Lordaeron in ruins. At some point, maybe they'll do something with it. And Zoss swimming in the sewers. I don't think he needs to swim in the sewers. Do you think it's due to war mode? I don't really see how. Will there be war mode ganking at the new faction hubs? I have no idea how war mode will affect the behaviour of players, to be honest. It will be interesting to see from afar, because I will not see it up close because I will not have war mode on. I'm quite pleased with the war mode mechanic because it allows me to ignore all that nonsense. That's what they did with BFA. Did what? Sorry, hold on. What did they do? Does that mean Outland is ruled by Alliance? I don't think so. Outland's just a rock anyway. Who wants to rule that? Illidan ruled Outland. I'm not quite sure. We haven't really revisited it. So I'm not quite sure what state Outland in today's timeline is supposed to be in. Are they made Alliance and Horde have different content? Yeah, continents, yes. That's BFA, yes. But it will happen just before BFA launches because it will happen with the scenarios that we're going to do up to that launch period. Because we're going to do the Burn of Teldrassil and the Siege of Lordaeron in the pre-expansion patch. But anyway. But we've come to the end of today anyway. So I'll just read this very last one. Oh, it seems to be Warhammer related. You read a far-fetched post suggesting a setup for an Age of Sigmar type end with two factions drifting off on broken lands to start anew. All I know is whatever storyline Blizzard have got up their sleeve is going to be extremely far-fetched. They obviously have a plan for all the weird things that are happening at the moment. And I think we are going to finish the Old Gods threat on Azeroth, this expansion. And so they're setting themselves up for a completely new story dynamic. And I think it's going to be super far-fetched. Doesn't mean to say it will be bad. I just think it will be very far-fetched. But what it is exactly, I do not know. You talk about Kulturas and Zuldazar being separate continents. Oh, those things. Well, yeah. I mean, that probably sort of had to happen anyway. Because, you know, regardless of what storyline they had in mind for the expansion following Legion, they were running out of land masses to stage it on. Come what may. And Kulturas and Zuldazar are not supposed to be in, you know, whatever land masses they had, it had to be South Seas islands anyway. Obviously, they've moved Kulturas a bit to the west and a bit south. You personally believe that at the very least, especially with Sargeras' sword being stabbed into Sluthus, that Cthulhu is going to start stirring again. Unless, of course, they now decide, despite what they said before, they now decide that he's dead. Because this is the thing. Uldir, last thing I'll say on the subject before we have to finish. Uldir, that whole thing is about killing old gods. That's what it's a facility to investigate, because that's what Gahum was doing. It was created so they could it was in Labyrat, so they could test things out on ways to kill an old god without harming Azeroth. So that's the real story of BFA, and as it would appear to be. And it wouldn't surprise me if they want us to finish off old god threat in BFA, just like we finished off the Legion threat in Legion. It would not surprise me if they decided it was more convenient to agree that Cthulhu and Doofer... Bugger. Who's Doofer in Ulduar? Shit. But Doofer in Ulduar are dead. He personally the lab slug. Well, yes, he does look more like a slug. A cross between a slug and a lamprey, really. He's got the circular Yogg-Saron, that's what I indeed mean. Obviously, Yasharaj is dead, so it really just leaves N'Zoth left, potentially. So we could have, raid where we deal with Uldir, we capture Uldir, we get its research stuff. Raid involve it where we've got Ashara at the end. raid that's something else, and then raid ending up with Unzoth, maybe even, or an encounter related to Unzoth. Something like that. Who knows? Anyway, I am going to call it there because I probably ought to go and do something. Not least of which is go and see if my cunning fly trap is working, because I've been getting flies. I've had to shut this window to stop more getting in, but there's still a few that haven't died, and there is still a window open over there. And the things I bought to try and kill them don't seem to be working, so I thought of using my brains. And I've got a glass downstairs with some honey mixed with warm water, and I've made a paper cone with a hole that's big enough for the fly to get in. But I'm hoping, you know how flies are shit and they can't even get out of an open window. I'm hoping it'll go in and not get out again, and I'll be able to collect them all. So I'm going to see if that's worked, and if it does, I'll put it in a few more rooms. And if it doesn't, I'll have to go back to the drawing board. So my task at the moment is how to unwit houseflies. Did I say unwit? I meant outwit. I don't even know what I'm talking about. So have a good night, everyone, and until next time, I will see you later.